What's up everybody? I'm Hype Man Dan, and today I'm thrilled to make you a video about my journey of building a custom Airbnb from the ground up, what it takes to do that. I hope that you can get out of this video that you don't need to be a real estate developer, you don't need to have a background in real estate to embark upon a similar project. A project that could help you achieve financial independence. It could help you quit your W-2 job. That's what it did for me. So the goal is to show you a project that could make you the #1 Airbnb in your market. The best formula I know for a top performing Airbnb. Let's get into it. So let's start with a project overview. I like to walk through the why, the what, and the how about a project before we dive in all the details and the numbers. But before we get to all of that, it would really help the channel, and since I'm opening up all my books and all my methodology, if you hit that subscribe button. If you're gonna help me out as a custom builder, be a custom subscriber to my channel, to Hype Man Dan. So smash that subscribe, smash that like button. Let's get into it though. Why would you build a custom Airbnb? Why would you build a house? Well, for me, the first answer to that was financial independence. And I was looking to quit my W-2 at Google. I made bozo bucks, but I was miserable working on other people's problems. So I figured, what if I could start a few assets that generated me enough money in a combination of all of them to quit my job? And this was the second asset in a series of short-term rentals. And this was my attempt, this build, to produce the highest earning and most passive investment that I could possibly do. So I looked around and I figured out what that form factor looked like. I got inspired. One of my biggest inspirations, I talk about it a lot, Rob built Casa Mariposa, I think was the house. He's done a bunch of new builds in Joshua Tree, and they all are white stucco with wood accents. So I took that design and I brought it to Colorado with some new flares. We'll walk through the inspirations. I didn't copy anyone else's designs. I just took some exterior coloring and decorations that worked well and brought it to my own design. So I built a house and a dome, and it combined together to be a large group property. I put a hot tub with it. It's about 1,800 square foot. It's a 4-bedroom, quote unquote, 1.5 bath property for 8 guests. So this is a custom new build house. And what makes it unique is often not what's in the house, but what's outside the house. The geodome accessory dwelling unit, the hot tub, the hanging basket chair. These are some features and amenities that you'll see as reoccurring themes in my builds and what I recommend that you do yourself. And this is where the money is made. This is where the off season is won, in the amenities. So I went all out with the amenities of this property, and to do that, I put in the geodome, the hot tub, the basket chair, some seating, a deck. Those are the things you need to really be successful. I'll show you how successful this property was. But the how do you do this? Well, like I said, you don't need to be a real estate developer. You don't need to have even ever built a house, bought a plot of land, or any development before, is what I learned. I just figured this out as I went, and I found the team I needed to get this done. And the team is a few things. You need a builder. You need someone that knows the area that you want to do. They know the general contractors. They know all the local permitting and regulations, which is how I figured out how to build a geodome. So I found the builder, and then I found a financier, and then I brought cash and some inspiration. And I rolled up my sleeves and I made a bunch of decisions about the finishings and all the designs and details. But that's essentially the formula. It's not as complicated as you would think. Let's dive into some of the details about this project. So let's start with the why. Why would you embark upon a project like this? Well, I think the #1 reason why you would do this is something called financial independence. I was working a job at Google. I was dissatisfied with my quality of life, with the projects I was working on. So I decided to do this project as a means to give me additional cash flow where I wasn't reliant on my W-2 job. So I did this mainly because it would be a high earning asset, and it would be mostly passive, an asset that I could run from my phone, from the beach, from a mountain, snowboarding, anywhere. And this could snowball into more assets and more developments, and it could be a proof of concept for me. So I built it because I wanted a career change, and I view this as the formula to be a high earning asset to enable that career change. And now let's talk about the what. What did we build here? We essentially built a home and a dome. I started out wanting to build a geodome, and I quickly realized that the easiest way to build a geodome is to first build a house, and then you could build a geodome. most land is zoned residential, and residential zoned land does not like geodomes, temporary structures, tents, stuff like that. So I realized the easiest place for me to build with the most demand was a residential zone where I had to build a house to build my geodome. So that's what we did. We built a 1,200 square foot house with a 600 square foot geodome as an accessory dwelling unit with a big hot tub next to it. It was a custom build. We put a bunch of high-end amenities that other units did not have, such as a 7-person hot tub, brand new builds, unique structures like the geodome. This was the formula that I used to try to earn as much as I could off of an Airbnb. And the how. How did I end up doing this? Well, first, you have to find some capable partners. Like, you probably are not a builder. Like, if you're watching this video and you're like, I've never built a house before, it's like, I've never built a house. I've paid people to build houses, and I found a general contractor that knows how to build them at a very reasonable cost relative to what they could earn. So the first step, if you wanted to do this, you have to find a builder, you have to bring some cash, and you have to find a financing partner. If you're not building this with all cash, you have to go to a bank. And banks will lend you money to build a house. They'll lend you money to build a primary, a secondary, or an investment loan. You can put down as little as 10%, or like me, you can put down 20% with a bank. You can get a commercial construction loan, and that will convert into a mortgage. A two-in-one product. So when you find the builder, the cash, some inspiration, and a financing partner, you simply just need to roll up your sleeves and make a couple decisions. And that's the how of how you do it. Okay, so how much did this house cost before we get too far into the numbers? The total build, everything included, this is land, materials, labor, design, lawyers, it was $450,000, the whole project. And the cash to do this is about $175,000 as an investment property. That's about $100,000 down, construction interest, closing cost, furnishings, setup fees, and some cash reserves for your business. So that 175 breaks down into the down payment, the closing cost, the interest, about 30K worth of furnishings, 15K worth of hot tub, and some setup and miscellaneous cost. And the house is currently valued at about $550. So by doing this custom new build, you're able to immediately realize value from the property. You're able to build it $450, and you're able to refi it $550 or $600 after a year. So the plan is eventually to roll the money out of this into the next build using a DSCR loan. So now let's talk about the X factors. What made this product different from everything else around? What differentiated this product? And this has kind of become my formula, my playbook, that I think if you follow this, you can have a very successful Airbnb, even with a non-custom built house, with a normal product. But as I mentioned, it's all about outside the box. What's outside the house? Here, we put a 27-foot custom luxury geodome, probably the best geodome in North America. We were able to finance it with the house in one loan. And my builder was able to help me do it with a lot of convincing. But we built a deck, we built the structure, furnished it, we put floors down. All in the geodome cost about $75,000 of the $450,000. But it's what makes the property what it is. The other top amenities that make it what it is a hot tub. We have a 7-person hot tub. This is a market of 150 houses where there were no more than 1 or 2 small old hot tubs in the market. So I said, let's build a house and let's put a brand new hot tub bigger than anyone else has. They'll definitely allow us to charge more than them. And the last factors, this is a new modern architecture and it's made for large groups. And if you want to get a lot of money per night, you have to be able to host a lot of people. So now let's step back. And you might be wondering, like, how did you find a location? That's often the hardest part, what people think about. And what I'll tell you is start somewhere close to you. Start with somewhere you're familiar with. In my case, I lived in Denver. So I created a driving radius map 3.5 hours from Denver just to see how far can you drive in a distance that I regularly see people driving for the weekend. You can get to Steamboat, you can get to Vail, and you can get to South Central Colorado, and you can get fairly west in 3.5 hours. I then made a short list of all the markets within that 3.5 hour radius. And I started looking at, first, where can I legally Airbnb? Where is it allowed to do? And secondly, where does it look like a good opportunity to invest? It might be legal in Silverthorne and Fresco, but the saturation combined with the city taxes does not make it a very attractive place to go buy an Airbnb. So I scanned all of these mountain communities, and I eventually found an area, a mountain town, that I thought there was a good opportunity. And don't go chasing me. This isn't the next Joshua Tree yet, but that town is called Crestone, Colorado. And it's in south central Colorado near Alamosa. And the main attraction nearby is the Great Sand Dune National Park, which we'll get into a little later. But my other Airbnb was near Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, and it seemed like a good strategy to expand on, this national park strategy. So I found a corner of Colorado where houses were cheap and there was a lot of demand and not very many Airbnbs. And I decided that looks enough to dive in further and do more research. So I, as a data analyst, aggregate and collect data. And one way you can do that is to look at the combination of where is it legal to invest as an investor and where is it profitable to invest as an investor. And if you look at Colorado and make a list of all the towns, Denver, Colorado Springs, Steamboat Springs, Fort Collins, Westminster, Aurora, Arvada, Winter Park, you can do some simple calculations. You can look at the average home price, look at the average Airbnb revenue, and in general, it will tell you that Colorado is not a crazy profitable place at the moment. But there are some places that are easier than others to operate, where the regulations have not become super strict. So first I found the easy regulation area, and then I found a place where there weren't enough Airbnbs for the demand. Crestone was the town for me. I pulled 5 years of historical data from AirDNA and I graphed it, I analyzed it. Critically, what I looked at, what stood out to me was that the growth of revenue, the sum of all the money all listings were making in a market, was outpacing demand and supply. So revenue was growing faster than supply could keep up with, and the amount of nights booked per month continuously rose faster than the listing growth. So if revenue and demand is growing faster than supply, it seems like it's not a fully saturated market. So revenue was up 33%, supply was up 16%, and demand was up 20%. So all these boxes were checked, and when you look at halfway through 2023, everybody's calling it an Airbnb bust. I look at my market and I see 20% year over year revenue growth with very little listing growth as well. So I don't see an Airbnb bust in this area. And I can go and through pulling data from Price Labs, we can pull a list of all the top properties in Crestone, and we can sort them, we can stack rank them, and this is the type of analysis you need to do if you want to enter a market. You need to know everything about your competitors. If you don't, then you're gonna make some mistakes. You're not gonna target the guests as efficiently as you could. So as Sun Tzu said, know thy enemy and know thyself. In 100 battles, you'll never be defeated. And I use this mentality, this mindset, to become the #1 Airbnb in Crestone with the strategy I'm showing you right now, that you could apply to any market across the US that you wanted with the same exact formula. So to do that, I learned who my competitors are. I learned the Tranquil Treehouse, which is for sale right now for $550,000, earns $53K per year. They gave me the data. If you ask a house for sale for their listing reservation data, they will give it to you. I knew the Alfresco Retreat, I knew the Heavenly Sanctuary, I knew who my top competitors were, I knew what made them tick. I knew how their decorations were, how their amenities were, and how I could differentiate myself, which is how I came up with that plan. House, geodome, hot tub, outdoor area, new build. So this is the property actually, this is the listing. It's been up for and running for about a year. And that #2, the previous #1, the Tranquil Treehouse, is for sale, and I pulled all their data and I was able to look at my reservations side by side with their reservations, and it blew my mind. This house, which has 5 bedrooms, 5 queen beds, easily hosts 10 people, was making $53,000 on Airbnb per year gross revenue. I had just wrapped up 11 months and I was on pace for $100,000 with a house with 3 queen beds and 2 twin beds, with only 2 real bedrooms instead of 5 real bedrooms. 2 bedrooms and a tent doubles the revenue of a 5-bedroom house. What are these people doing wrong? Because this is obviously a really cool listing. But by going through the data, I figured it out. It's a tip that you can take forward in your own listing. This is the monthly revenue that you're seeing that my listing made in orange versus the blue line of what the Lighthouse made. And that's how you get double the revenue. You 4x them in the winter. You win high season by 50%, you win slow season by 200%. So after we swap the first and second floor, we have to finalize my version of this house design that I bought. So we start with the blank slate. Then we add some of that wood siding, as you can see in this next one. And then we throw in the geodome, and this is ultimately the finished version, the CAD file for the house in the dome that we submitted for planning. And ultimately the look changed a little bit on the house, and the dome ended up getting bigger. Next, people ask me a lot, like, how did you find land? Like, I had been obsessed with finding land for a long time, and I was telling people over the lunch table that one day I was gonna buy land, and I wasn't sure what I was gonna do with it. But this ultimately became what I did with that land. But I found the land by drawing a circle around the national park, the Great Sand Dunes. And I found a couple different sectors or groupings of land, and they were ultimately planned use developments that had been built 20, 30, 40 years ago with hundreds of subdivided lots for single family homes. One was 5 minutes from the park with no utilities, and you had to build everything. And the other one was an hour from the park, had a town, but had utilities. So it's further from the park, but with more access, and that's where my builder was. It's called the Baca Grande. So we decided on the farther away one because that's where the Airbnbs were, that's where the builder was. The other sector of plots right by the entrance to the park was ultimately too hard to pull off. And it wasn't where there were a lot of Airbnbs, a lot of good comps either. So I chose the Baca Grande Property Owners Association because there were tons of unique buildings. There was very few regulations on what you can build. It's a sandbox for amazing Airbnbs. And there were a lot of local attractions outside of the park, like spiritual retreat centers, meditation centers, Buddhist temples. There's some really weird stuff out there too. So it had some other draws for tourism. But mainly my builder only agreed to build in that subdevelopment that I ultimately choose that. And then it was down to finding the final plot. And you might not be an expert on land and how buildable it is. I certainly wasn't. My opinion on this is hire an expert. Your builder, your general contractor, he will know how to estimate the buildability of a land. He can look at the neighbors around, he can look at the views and the sight lines. So I created a short list and I gave it to my builder to go drive around town, and he helped me choose which plot ultimately he thought was best for this project, which you can see right here. You can see the trees on the right side of this picture, and ultimately you can see the same trees next to the finished house. So I bought half an acre for $22,000. 2 years ago, it's August 2021, I bought it, and the house has now been up for a full year. So just know that you can do this project faster than you think, and land is not as expensive in Utah and Colorado and Wyoming and Idaho as it is in the East Coast sometimes. But how much does this property make? What's this revenue? What's its expenses? That's an important part of this project. I now have about 12 months of history, and it makes $100,000, mostly from Airbnb, about 78% from Airbnb, the rest from direct booking and VRBO. And expenses in the first year were about $67,000 for a net income of $33,000 and a net cash flow of $28,000 on the original $165,000, $170,000. So we have 17% cash on cash for all of our investors. And if we do this project again, interest rates would bite us and they'd be a little lower, and they are. And if you watch the follow-up video, which will come out in a week after this, we'll talk about the next build and how it changes when you're paying 8%. But if you want to see some historical data, here's some information. I can flash it on the screen for you. You can see my monthly revenue versus the different bands that I projected it in. I projected myself to be the 100th percentile, frankly, with this unit, and that's what the yellow forecast represents, and the red lines have been my actual for accommodation fee, removing the cleaning fee from the equation. You can also see the amount of nights I forecasted to sell, the amount of nights I did sell, and you can see that it takes 4 to 6 months to really ramp up, since you're kind of chasing that longer lead time when you launch that you weren't able to capture until you're 3-4 months in. So you should be tracking KPIs, key performance indicators about your short-term rental very closely. You should know each month how much it's supposed to make so you can do variances versus a forecast. And that's how you really get on top of projecting and understanding. So we'll show a quick montage right now of the finished product. Some of the shots that my team, Abe and Eli, shot when we went out to Colorado back in August. So now, what are the main lessons that I've learned 1 year into running a new build, 2 years after I started the project? Well, I think you hear this a lot, but expect things to be more expensive and to take longer than you expect. Even though we built it in 9 months, we originally thought we could do it in 6 months from breaking ground. And we went over budget by $20,000, $25,000, mainly in extra things that we decided to scope change the project, such as a bigger geodome, a bigger deck, bigger hot tub than I originally forecasted when I was designing the property, because I wanted it to be ultimately as close to what it came out to be as a top performer. So you probably are going to want to make upgrades and make improvements, maybe add landscaping. It's really hard to line item everything from day one. So you should have some slush funds and some expectation that this will take up to 20-30% longer and cost 10 to 20% more than you might have expected, and have that not be a deal breaker if that happens, which it wasn't on this project. We had the money in the bank to pay the extra interest on the construction loan and to have more reserves, and we put more cash in when needed to make the project bigger than originally expected. But I've really learned that the harder road pays off, that easy street is really crowded, and the difficult hike up the mountain, there's only a few mountaineers climbing it, and if you train enough to be one of those mountaineers, you can access the ore, the riches that exists in the areas that most people are not touching. Because building a geodome, frankly, was really difficult to figure out. Like, my builder barely agreed to do this. I had to waive liability on the structure and go down there and supervise, and make it happen somewhat myself for parts of it. So if you're willing to go the harder route, you can get the bigger reward. And next, I'm translating this success into some new builds. So if you keep watching some of my more new build, how to do this video series, you can check out the cube house, which is this black and white drawing, floor to ceiling glass windows with all these cool amenities, and you can see this pyramid A-frame I'm working on. So if you found this useful, subscribe, like, stay tuned for more. Appreciate you.